All right, good evening, everybody. Welcome to our special meeting this Monday. And I really appreciate everybody doing this. We have to go with the flow, as it were, in order to make things happen. So we really appreciate everybody being here. So under new business, our first order is a discussion on swing space. And I'm going to turn it over to Chip, who's got a presentation for us.
All right, let me share my screen. You should be able to see the PDF cover page.
Yes, we can.
Perfect. So, you know, as everybody knows, we've been working hard to find a suitable swing space with, you know, going through various different options all over town. And as we spoke last time, there was still a couple of spaces at MetLife to look at, as well as one on Britton Ave. So I think that's where we are now. We have updated this sheet that I shared last time. Right now, the top three are the locations that are still in play. Two areas at the main MetLife building. When we were here last time, we were talking about the flex building that was, you know, kind of away from the main building that was going to need a lot of construction, both cost and time. We had identified potentially another space in there that actually was already leased out. So came back to them in the main building. So those actually the square footage, actually the second one is incorrect. That was copied down. That was actually, that second one is actually larger. And then also the one at 9 Britton Drive. Also wanted to let you know that that the library has worked out to hold the children's story time in the town council chambers. So, you know, they're looking for a lot of the children's programming to be not in the main swing space, but different areas around town. So one of the areas, for instance, for story time is going to be the town council chambers. So the areas that we are still looking at right here, just to show on a map, right here is the Prosser Library. Here is McMahon-Wittenbury. The MetLife building is located down in this area, a little bit southwest, and 9 Britton is a little bit south of the McMahon-Wittenbury site. So I wanted to give a little bit of information about each of the locations. First of all, in the MetLife building, this is the what's actually the second floor. This is the main entrance that you come in, which is located right here below this. You would come in under this walkway, come across the lobby, up the escalator onto this level of atrium. This hall is a major atrium covering this whole area. Area E, Suite E, is this area right here, which is about 26,000 square feet. And D and E is about 40,000 square feet. Just to give a little bit more information, Area E is open to that lobby area. You can see just right here that the building does have a significant white noise machine throughout the entire building because most of the suites are open to the lobby. As you can see, this Area E is pretty much move-in ready. There are all these partitions here that we can relocate to use as we need. There's a IDF closet serving this suite so that that would provide the opportunity to install the server and run all of the IT in this area on our own equipment with the existing infrastructure that's there. The other area, D and F, is not as finished. It's larger space, much more than we need, but none of it is carpeted. So there would be a pretty significant cost to get this space ready, assuming we could get enough carpet to do that, and still move in. So this area, though larger, is less attractive because it's just not ready to go as the area E. Any questions on MetLife before moving on?
I just wanted to make a couple of additional comments, in addition to hearing any questions. Both of these spaces, E that's carpeted and across the hall, the D and F, you're looking at a raised computer access floor. In other words, that you can lift up any piece of that floor and get underneath and run wires. And there's also, because of that, there's already built-in power outlets and data outlets right there on the floor. I think they're 6 feet on center. I know Bob has done some investigating already into that with our IT people. The wiring goes back to a closet within that area. So even the IT work here to get this space ready would be absolutely minimal. It's really kind of a gift. And those movable partitions you see on the back side of the space would be ours to do as whatever we want to do with them. They're easily movable. Hopefully Public Works would do the majority of that moving. Although I already heard from Downs that they could also possibly help us out with that a bit. So we'll work with our architect team, see what we want to do with those partitions to get our best layout. We'll have Elizabeth and team work with them to see how that should be laid out. So this area E has been the closest to move-in shape of anything that we've looked at on all of the list to date. Plus I've got to say that the atrium that this opens up into makes it one of the premier spaces in the town of Bloomfield, if not the state of Connecticut or even larger. It's a magnificent place to be. Not that we have been looking for a beautiful, spectacular space. We realize it's temporary, but it does have that benefit as well. So I just wanted to point out a couple things about that space. Lois.
Would there be savings because these spaces are so large in terms of storage at other locations? Would we have reduced the need for other storage?
Yes, there will, and that's something that I'm going to address later on in the presentation. But yes,
and how about
we will be able to store everything on site here. We won't need to be doing anything other than moving.
And how about handicapped accessibility?
It's fully handicap accessible. We have toilet rooms in the facility that are ADA compliant.
And how close is the parking?
Parking is a ways. I mean, the parking's out in this area out in the front. So you come in the doors here and there's a escalator, but then there's also elevators. I'm not sure exactly where the elevators are on here. This looks like one.
Yeah.
But there are, you would come under and then up the elevator and onto this floor. It is all handicap accessible.
And is there any reserved parking for handicap? There must be.
Yes, there is.
Thank you.
Other questions?
All right, then let's talk about 9 Britain. Again, actually go back here. 9 Britain is it on Britain and near Blue Hills Avenue is where that's located. Here we're talking about this area here, up through this demising line. In this case, again, we've got a offices areas here, and then this is all unfinished, some of which we would want to add carpeting to, some of which we would leave open for storage. There is some construction needed to block off windows and doors in this area. But in essence, we would be taking this space. This is the front door here. Pull that up again. This is the front of the building. The office area, again, is in good condition, pretty much move-in ready. There is one ADA toilet room currently. If we need a second one, we would have to do that work. And as you can see, the rest of this is warehouse space, some of which we would leave raw for storage, and some of which we would want to add carpeting and power in order, and data in order to make that more usable. Did put together this summary to compare the three spaces. From the MetLife, we have the same lease terms. We were able to actually negotiate them down from their original proposal so that it works out to about $10,700 for 14 months. Again, the Suite E is 26,000 square feet. Suite D and F is 40,000 square feet. E is the one that is carpeted, and basically they've said, you know, they didn't see that they were going to be looking to use that. We could use, you know, whatever in there that we need for the most part. Work that's going to, and then 9 Britain for 14,400 square feet is $8,400 a square foot, not including utilities. So with the MetLife, the only kind of utility costs we would need to do is janitorial services would not be included, but all of the electrical, heating, everything else is included. One issue is that they do not supply HVAC on weekends. They do charge $150 an hour for any weekend use on the HVAC, so we'll need to work through that. And right now, their security system, or their security policies require sign in and show driver's license at the building. We've been working with them and working with the library to come up with alternates to not have to do that. Elizabeth, I don't know if you want to talk about that right now, what your thoughts are.
Yes, we learned during COVID that we know how to quickly react and respond to situations. So we know that we can be flexible and adaptive to what is needed in terms of security needs. The first thought we had was that we would have a greeter, which is something similar to what we did during COVID-19 in Prosser, because we did not have full visual access. So we thought we could do something similar to that. In terms of weekend access, we understand the costs and would work to find a solution, whether it be in other buildings or looking at other ways to fund that outside of the library building committee.
All right, so we're putting together a plan on how to address the security. So far, the broker has expressed optimism that we can work through that without requiring the full-blown security that everybody else has in the building. I know Elizabeth had also mentioned having the greeter would have lanyards for the library patrons to identify them, and with additional personnel with walkie-talkies just to make sure that we're guiding everybody through the building and so they can find where they're going at the other end of that atrium. The lease cost for both E and DF. Oh, I'm sorry. Wait, before let me go back to 9 Britain. Then looking at against utilities are not included there. Preparation work. Suite E. Pretty much all we have to do is hook up the IT network and move the partitions. Everything else is ready to go. D and F. Not only we have to do the IT as well, and then also install carpeting throughout whatever area we're going to be using. 9 Britain does have additional work in addition to the network, we also would need to be installing data outlets in many locations. There's an area in there I mentioned we need to partition off the windows and doors. We have to install carpeting. The handicap bathroom has some minor needs to it, but if, likely we may be required to have a second toilet room, which would have to be created as well. From a cost, 14 months for each of the MetLife buildings is $150,000 at the 10,714. That equates to $117,600 for 9 Britain. Regardless of which way we go, we're going to need to provide fire egress plans to the fire marshal. We're assuming about 40 hours worth of work. So that's about $7,200 from a space preparation standpoint. Estimating about $5,000 for Suite E, $35,000 for Suite D and F, the biggest difference being the carpeting, and upwards of $50,000. This is kind of honestly probably a minimum at 9 Britain that we would need to spend to get that space ready. Utilities included at MetLife. The tenants have always paid that, so they didn't have an estimate. I threw $1,000 a month for utilities. So that's another $14,000, which felt reasonable. As low as that storage space. We have zero cost now for storage space. Each of these 3 areas does provide enough room so that all of the materials that we're going to go into storage can be on site. Much of which then would be usable, whereas it wouldn't have been previously. So that leaves $162,200 for the total cost of temporary space Suite E, $192,200 for Suites D and F, and $188,800 for 9 Brit. Our current move proposal is $108,000. I need to get that updated because now we're significantly changing what we're moving, where and how. So I'll be doing that in the next week or two, which leaves the total temporary space and move costs for Suite E at $270,200, DNF at $300,200, and 9 Britain at $296,800. The temporary move and temporary space and move budgets total about $270,000. So we're right there on Suite E. The others aren't that far off, but again, Suite E is right there. From a timing standpoint, for the preparation and move, we anticipate that could be done simultaneously and would only take about 2 weeks into MetLife. It would be another week because of adding all the carpeting in Suites D and F. That's again assuming that we can find carpeting. I'm not including procurement time because we've got a little bit to of time before we start. And 9 Britain is going to be a minimum of 4 weeks, I think, of construction, again, depending on whether we need to construct that second ADA bathroom. And that's it for the summary. Any questions?
Just before we take any questions, Elizabeth, who's been very involved in this process, thank you. Anything else that you wanted to add on these spaces?
No, I just wanted to say thank you. I really think that the MetLife spaces specifically would be wonderful for our public, our deserving public, and would allow us to maintain the majority of library services we currently offer during the swing space time. So I want to say thank you to Chip, Bob, and Mark for helping us get here.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Questions? Don't see any. Okay. Bob?
Yeah, no question. I'd like to make a motion.
Please do.
And my motion is that we move to rescind previous recommendation for swing space at Woodbury Mall to recommend the town council lease for up to 26,012 square feet in Suite E in the MetLife Atrium Building at 1300 Hall Boulevard for library swing space.
Second.
Okay, moved by Mr. Berman, second by Mr. Ike. Any other comments, discussions, questions? I don't see any. Nancy, would you take a roll call vote for us there, please?
Sure.
I'll make sure we get this right.
Okay, Bob Berman,
Aye.
Bob Ike,
Yes.
see who else we have here? Lois Hager,
Yes,
Dr. Bryant, I'm back to Erica Coleman,
Present.
do you want to vote yes or no?
Yes. I vote yes.
Thank you. Dr. Bryant? Mark Weissman,
Chair votes yes. No, is Dr. Brian having trouble?
I don't know, but it's 5-0. Well, without her vote.
We have a quorum.
We do.
Yes, we do. So it's a majority vote. It's
All right.
unanimous.
Then, assuming we're not going to get any vote out of her at this point, I'm hitting ask to unmute.
Yes, I did too.
Well, the motion passes, so I thank everybody on that. Maybe we'll hear from her later. I hope she can turn her speakers on. All right. Anything else on swing space?
All I have.
I just wonder about the publicizing it so that people will know where it is, how to get there, what the plan is going to be for that. It would be required whatever place we choose.
Elizabeth, you want to take that?
Yes, we are prepared to fully publicize all of the locations. Currently, the outreach committee is working on an updated informational board to go in our public facilities across town. We will also be putting in a full page ad in the messenger, and we will be broadcasting it fully in-house and at our upcoming farewell parties. So we are ready for a full PR campaign, including also on social media and our website as well.
I have to say the realtor and the owners were very responsive to us, both in terms of cost and information. When we were initially told that all they had was second floor space available, I turned to Elizabeth and said, should we look at second floor? And she says, absolutely. And when you enter that building, it's almost a better place to be. The second floor, the brief walk through the atrium is magnificent. It's not confusing. It's not a maze. It's very easy to find the space. It's a really good experience for library patrons and library staff. So we hope that we have much better luck negotiating the lease after this point than we had at the mall. And I thank everybody for their efforts. All right, why don't we move on to construction manager update. Tom.
Okay, thanks, Mark. We have a pretty quick update today. I'd like to share my screen. And we are formally requesting to pre-purchase the electric switchgear for both the Prosser and McMahon libraries. One of the largest components and biggest hurdles right now in our industry is the lead time in the procurement for the electrical switchgears, which, as you can see on the screen here, are 70+ weeks from when we make a recommendation or award. And there's a significant amount of upfront work that needs to be done in the form of submittals, coordination studies on the electrical end in order to actually release it. And in most cases, the lead time exceeds the total duration of the project, and it is one of the most, if not the most important component in the brains to operate your building. So we've been dealing with this on a number of projects. We've been successful pre-purchasing these units, and we went out to a trusted electrical contractor, Custom Electric, who we've had success doing this with. And they went out to 2 different electrical suppliers, electrical wholesalers and Northeast Electric. And we have the bid results essentially from both of their vendors. We also vetted these with TSKP, their electrical engineer. We had some good dialogue back and forth, because keep in mind, the design is not 100% finalized. So we have to make sure that the scope is complete at the time we make this award. So Custom Electric came back to us with $137,966 proposal for a 70+ week lead time for the switchgear for Prosser. Northeast Electric was $155,000. They were about 65+ weeks. Just to keep, just as a point of mention, we've included 75 weeks in the schedule that we've prepared for this particular project, because we know trying to forecast anything 70+ weeks is very difficult. Albeit we have had projects now where we've gotten to that point, and plus or minus the switch gears are showing up in and about the time that they're predicting, but it takes an effort to keep your finger on the pulse there. And for the McMahon Library, again, same 2 vendors, electrical wholesalers, $73,740, and Northeast Electric, $84,817. So we're formally asking for approval to issue a contract to Custom Electric for both the Prosser and McMahon switchgears that they enter into a contract with electrical wholesalers. Are there any questions?
So we have it on the table. I'll move that we authorize Downs to go do a contract with Custom
Custom Electric.
Custom Electric.
Mhm.
For the switchgear from electrical wholesalers for $137,966 for Prosser and $73,740 for McMahon.
Second,
Moved by Mr. Berman, seconded by Mr. Ike. Questions, discussion, Elizabeth?
Elizabeth's got her hand up, I see.
Yes, Elizabeth.
I had a question. So if we did this, would that interfere with our ability to secure the McMahon-Wittenberry grant, the $1 million grant from the state library, seeing that we have yet to go to the bond commission?
Nancy, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that it will for McMahon.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's a good question. It's something we've been facing this whole process, knowing that are we going to sacrifice our schedule and therefore dollars because of the maybe opportunity for the grant. So, I think it's time for us to make that decision. That's part of this as well. I think we've been talking about it for a long time, knowing this moment was going to come when we would move forward with the project and forego the possibility of the grant, which is not in our hands yet. So yes, this would preclude that. entering into a contract with,
Unless the state
With
would
the
like to be generous and allow us to do this, knowing that, you know, they still might want to give us the grant, but
Yeah, due to unforeseen circumstances around COVID and inflation and supply chain issues, I'm wondering if we could have the opportunity to present that to the powers that be before voting on the McMahon-Wittenberry part of this.
who's the powers that be?
I believe it would be the State Library Board.
And how soon do you think that would take? The only reason I ask that is because we're on a tight schedule to be out of the swing space and getting to McMahon. So trying to gauge how long that would take from the state's perspective.
And that I'm not sure about. I did want to ask though, because if I'm understanding correctly, the idea was that we would use the old switchgear until the new switchgear came in. So if we were talking a difference of 4 weeks, would that down the road impact us that much?
Well, I think we're still kind of working out the logistics of how to operate the McMahon Library under the current switchgear and electrical service, and then swap it out. Because right now, as a rule of thumb, we've been carrying in our schedules about 1 month for the installation and switchover of the switchgear from old to new. Also keep in mind that 70-week lead time is upwards of 16 to 17 months. And I think we're currently carrying around a 10 or 11-month schedule for McMahon. So right now, the theory and the thought process would be to move into McMahon under the current switchgear, under the current electrical service, and then come back and swap it over. We just have to work out the logistics of exactly where the new switchgear is being built and how that gets switched over. And I don't know that we've worked through every scenario there. So there could potentially be some downtime to the McMahon Library when we do that switch over, but it would be after occupancy. Maybe we can offer the committee to vote to move forward with this, and then we can kind of stay in contact and in touch prior to actually signing the contract. Maybe that'll buy us a little bit more time. But we did try to make it a package deal as well. So we would have to go back to the electrician and break these two now apart.
What kind of time frame, Tom, you think we're looking at? Maybe we should just give ourselves a limited amount of time to hear back from the library, the State Library Board.
I mean, but really, what's the answer going to be when you think about it? Either they're going to say yes or no. If they say no, does that mean that the building committee wants to stop the project and wait until whenever it gets on the bond commission? If they say yes, then we've already moved forward. So,
True, there's really no drawback at that point.
right.
Bob?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, that's kind of what I was going to ask Elizabeth. What can we, what's the advantage putting off voting on McMahon? Because if they still say no, you can't go out for bid until a contract's signed with the State Library Board, assuming we even get on the bond commission agenda, which we don't even know if that's going to happen. We've lost time because that's 70 weeks. If they go ahead and say, yeah, you can go ahead out for bid, we'll waive that part. They're going to say that whether we've gone out for bid or not. I don't understand what we would gain by delaying.
It's my understanding that we can go out to bid, we just can't sign contracts. Scott, I mean, Tom, is that
Right,
understanding?
right. That's my understanding as well.
Yeah,
I thought they have to approve our bid ad. I thought.
They do. We just can't sign contracts though.
Well, then I guess it doesn't do any harm for us to go ahead and do it. And then depending on when it hits the bond commission, if it does, then we make the decision then.
I have one more question. Tom, so are you saying that even if we go for this immediately, we're still going to go into McMahon Wittenberry with the old switchgear based off of this timeline?
Right now, that's the plan.
Okay,
Yeah, I mean, as everybody is in our industry, we're keeping our fingers crossed that lead times and supply chain issues start to free up a little bit. But right now, this is the information that we have. So that's what we're planning on, yes.
Lois?
Elizabeth, you have much closer contact with the library board, but my experience with the state is that if there's something in writing that changes, that requires that we have something in place, to ask them to budge they're going to be more likely to say no than yes, because we're going to set a precedent that's going to be difficult for them in the future. I don't know whether in the past they've given latitude or not. Do you?
I'm not sure.
I'm just
This
concerned.
is my first experience with grants of this size with the state library.
Yeah, I think it's wonderful to pursue it, and I've been wanting to be supportive of that right along. But I am worried about the time frame. If we can authorize it by the vote today and gain a little time before the contract is actually put out, maybe we would have more information. So I think that's a creative idea, Tom.
Eva?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. I think we should pursue Tom's recommendation. Library grants from the state are not the same as the other grants from the state. They're run by a different part. They have to meet the approval of the state library board. So their rules are different. The amounts are different. Everything about those grants is not the same as other grants. You know, West Hartford could easily get $3 million for their tennis courts. We're scrambling to ask for $1 million for a library. That's just how they are. I think Tom's suggestion gives us a little bit of leeway. The committee can still vote to go ahead. Tom can do everything he can. If the state says no, then it's no. If the state has some leeway, great. I think it's still worth it for us if Tom can pursue the plan that he described to ask. This is like anything. If you don't ask them, you will never know. The least we can do is ask. We're talking about $1 million less for Bloomfield taxpayers to have to fork over in very difficult times. So we'll ask. And if they say no, no. But on the chance that something comes through, we might luck out and get the money for Bloomfield. That sounds like a win-win to me. So the committee can go ahead, Tom can go ahead, and we'll see what happens.
All right, so we have a motion on the floor. Any other comments on the motion? All right, all in favor of the motion, please. Nancy, why don't you go around the
Sure.
table again for me, please?
Bob Berman,
Yes.
Bob Ike,
Yes.
Lois Hager,
Yes,
Dr. Bryant, Erica Coleman,
yes,
I
Mark Weissman.
vote yes. I'm curious if you can get to Dr. Bryant under the attendees.
No,
You tried that, okay. All right, in that case, motion passes. Thank you all for that. Thank you, Tom, for being
All right.
flexible about that.
Yep,
And,
we'll keep in contact. Thank you.
all right, all right. Invoices, Nancy?
yes, we have two. Sorry, I sent them out late today. But the first one is for TSKP invoice 220103-10, services through December 31st for McMahon for, where are we at? 65% construction documents for $36,031.01.
So moved.
Moved by Mr.
Second.
Pike, seconded by Mr. Berman. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
I,
Any nays? Motion passes. Thank you.
The next one is also for TSKP through December 31st, 2022. Invoice 200802-13 to TSKP Studio for construction documents through 65%. And the invoice, this is for Prosser, by the way, is $111,000.
So moved.
Moved by
Second.
Mr. Wright, seconded by Mr. Berman. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
I,
Aye.
Nays. Motion passes. Thank you.
That's it for me.
All right. Comments from the committee? See any hands?
Oh, me, sorry, after Elizabeth.
What's that?
Elizabeth has her
Oh,
hand,
Elizabeth, you have your hand up. Thank you.
and then me.
Okay.
I just wanted to say how excited I am for our public about the potential of this new swing space, and how I look forward to hopefully letting everybody know as soon as possible. So thank you to the LBC for that tonight.
Thank you. Yeah, so we'll go to town council with that tonight. Then if that goes well, I assume it will, we move on to town planning and zoning on the 26th, and then back to the council for final approval. So the town manager can sign a lease. In the meantime, we will be working out the details of the lease. Nancy, you had your hand up.
Yes, the only other thing I would add to that, and it would be anticipated that the lease would come back to the council for full approval on February 13th. And that also on Thursday, in addition to the swing space being on the TPZ agenda, also the permit for Prosser is also on the agenda for TPZ. So if you have nothing to do on your Thursday night, feel free to join TPC.
I can also comment on the 50% CD estimate, which is currently being reconciled between Downs and TSKP. The report I'm getting is we're okay. Okay, I don't want. We'll get a full report at our next regular meeting, or if we happen to have a special meeting. It looks like at this point, schedule wise, we are scheduled for a regular meeting this Wednesday. It is being Nancy has issued it an agenda and on the books. But at this point, it looks like we will not be needing the Wednesday meeting. I'll let everybody know. But I don't think it will be necessary to meet on Wednesday. So keep it penciled in on your calendar, please, for the next day or so, and we'll issue a which way we're going on that. Anything else from committee members? All right, public comments. I did receive a written public comment that I just wanted to read into the record from Kevin Goff, 5 Bear Ridge Drive. It says, hi, Mark, here's a written comment for tomorrow's Library Building Committee special meeting. There seems to be difficulty finding a suitable swing space for the library building project. The attachment to the special meeting agenda gives 2 options: space on Britton Avenue and space in the MetLife building. Both are poor, non-central locations and expensive. The MetLife option has security issues for the general public. At this point, should the town reconsider the decision to do both buildings at once and stage the project instead, doing one building at a time so as to use the other building as the continued operation location? Obviously, no one can predict future cost bids if the project is not done in one piece now, but I, for one, would like to see some scenario comparisons to gauge whether sequencing the project would make better operating and financial sense. So hopefully we are past that. But I wanted to get that in the record. We have other public comments, Nancy?
Yes, Sten
Yeah.
Casperson.
Thank you, Nancy. Mr. Chairman, I'll be very brief. I'm sorry to input the two, just to remind people. Months ago, there had been discussion of early procurement of key items. I'm a little surprised to learn, perhaps incorrectly, it's taken this long to get to, okay, bite the bullet and do early procurement. Months ago, long ago, it had been suggested to consider the possibility of finishing McMahon first because of numerous process, call it difficulties. And if I'm hearing that that's on the table now to be done, go for it. Thank you.
Thank you.
And
Other
next,
hands?
next we have Linda Pagani.
Thank you, Nancy. Yes, I just wanted to say thank you to the committee for making this kind of milestone moment of deciding on a swing space. So it's exciting, and the MetLife space looks fantastic. And yeah, and I just really appreciate it. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Other hands?
That's it.
All right, thank you, everybody from the public.
I move we adjourn,
Motion
Mr.
to
Chairman.
adjourn. All right, motion from Mr. Berman, second
Second.
from Mr. Ike. Thank you all. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for the special meeting. We're on
Good
to
night.
the